Let me give you another one. This one deals with the placement order of the questions. In 1998, President Bill Clinton got into a scandal, the Monica Lewinsky scandal, and out of that became charges of obstruction of justice and other kinds of abuses of office, and eventually he was impeached in the House of Representatives. And impeachment just meant that he was charged with high crimes and misdemeanors, or whatever the Constitution says, and that he had to go to trial in the Senate in order to keep his presidency. All right, well, during that year, when all this scandal was brewing, the news media would publish Clinton's favorability rating. You know, what percent of Americans think that he was doing a good job in office. And if you look deeper, they would also publish what people thought of Bill Clinton's character. And so now, almost always, when those questions were asked, the first question of those two asked was, how do you think Bill Clinton is doing in office? Is he doing a good job in office? Well, he, and two-thirds, invariably about two-thirds of the American people thought, he's doing a good job. And then after that came the question, well, what do you think of Bill Clinton's character? And only about a third of the Americans liked his character. They didn't really have a high opinion of him as a person. But as president, they thought he was doing a good job. All right, well, one pollster at one time reversed the order of those questions and got a dramatically different result. And it didn't look good either as far as support for him as president. And so there's a psychological issue there. If they had asked the question first, what do you think of the character of Bill Clinton? And of course, two-thirds of the people would have said, don't like the guy, I don't think he's got a good character. And then if you ask, well, is he doing a good job in office? Well, apparently, you know, that order of the questions made a difference. And so that placement of questions can be subtle. Now, I won't pretend to understand the psychology of that, but apparently there was some psychology involved in the placement order of questions. So anyway, something to consider as a response to error. That's about all we say about it in this course. That you know, these early chapters are really about helping you to start thinking better statistically, and to be a little more astute about what makes good statistics, what makes bad statistics. All right, on page 46, this is, I think, important. Talks about experimental data and control group. Experimental data are data collected on variables resulting from the manipulation of subjects in experiments. And then it says a control group is a randomly selected subset of the subjects in an experiment that is not manipulated. All right, so give an example of this. If, for example, suppose a pharmaceutical company came up with a new headache drug, supposed to cure headaches. All right, well, they have to go out and test it statistically in order to be able to market it as a headache cure. And so they'll get a sample of people with headaches, and typically what's done in that instance is that half the people will get the experimental drug, headache drug, and the other half of the people will either get nothing or they'll get a placebo. A placebo is a fake pill, usually a sugar pill, that but the person taking it thinks he's taking the real drug. All right, now, so the control group are the people getting the placebo. The experimental group are the ones being experimented on with a new drug. Now, why do they need a control group? Well, some of the people in the control group, their headaches will go away automatically. And but so do the people in the experimental group, do their headaches go away faster or more frequently? So we need a basis for comparison. The control group is the basis on which we're comparing the experimental drug. And so that's what an experimental group is versus control group. It forms a basis of comparison. So we compare these two results to see if they're significantly different or not. So it is. Now, not everything in statistics requires or needs a control group. Sometimes we imply there's a control group. Let me give you an example. Suppose we came up with an experimental weight loss plan and that we want to market, and we go out and we get willing people to go on it, and they go on this weight loss plan for a month. At the end, we find out, did they lose weight? And so we go out and measure the average weight loss of these people. Now, if we want to prove that that weight loss was significant, what are we going to compare it to? We need something to compare it to. Well, how about comparing it to no weight lost, 0 pounds lost? So in that case, the control group, although it's not a formal control group, we're using 0 as, no weight lost, as the basis for comparison. So it's as if we're inferring an experimental, inferring a control group is there. All right, well, let's say I don't want to get too bogged down in this chapter on those types of issues. I do think reading the chapter is good. And a lot of examples. The authors do go into a lot of elaboration on all this. Page 52 has a picture of Sir Ronald Fisher. And Fisher was one of the pioneers in statistics. I think he lived in the first half of the 20th century and pioneered a great deal of this whole subject. His name shows up from time to time. There's a distribution, or there's a table we learn later in the course called the F distribution, and that's named for Fisher. And F numbers are Fisher numbers, and presumably he came up with that. Fisher is the source of that 95% that I mentioned earlier. Remember, it says sampling error happens 19 out of 20 times, 95% of the time. Well, someone once asked Fisher, "What's your at what point do you feel confident in a statistical result? What standard do you use?" He said, "Well, I like to use 95%. If I'm 95% confident, then I'll go with it." Well, it means that 95% of the time, then if you're right 95% of the time, then that's the standard he used. It turned out that's the standard that most people use. So anyway, I'll talk about that again as we go through the course. But usually that's the standard to determine if something is significant or not. All right, well, it's kind of a short chapter, and I don't really have much else to say about it. There are some problems in the book that most of them are really pretty good in this book. I like the problems. But some of these are a little open-ended. There's really no answers in the back of the book. You have to think about them. And so I think I'm going to pretty much leave that alone and go on to chapter 3. In the back of the book, you have to think about them.